Hi, my name is Riley Allen. This is my review of Chapter 3 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets titled The Burrow. We start off where we left off with the twins and Ron in a flying car of all damn things, rescuing Harry. So they rescue Harry, and this man proceeds to commit what I think is the most cardinal sin to ever happen so far in these books. He forgets Hedwig. He remembers his school supplies, boring, but he forgets, like, the bestest girl, Hedwig? No. And then for some reason, the Dursleys do wake up for the racket they're making, because they're ripping the bars off the damn window. And for some reason, Vernon doesn't like this. Petunia, the boy's escaping! Isn't, like, this a win? You ain't gotta deal with him. I mean, yes, you now gotta, pay for damages that happen, but, like, it's what you reap what you sow, and you locked the child in a room and starved him. So, I mean, eat shit, I guess. And Harry, see you next summer. Just see you next summer. God. So Harry explains what happened to the letters they had to Ron and the twins about the letters and Dobby. And the twins are like, probably a prank. And they they come to the conclusion that it might be Malfoy. You know, they explain that house elves have powerful magic, but they can't use it unless their masters say so. And this is kind of something I think is overlooked. They do mention that Miss Weasley would want a house elf. So as, like, good as the Weasleys are, they're still old purebloods, and, like, at least Miss Weasley, from the twins' point of view, because we didn't hear this from Miss Weasley, we heard it from the twins, and we don't know how serious it was. It might just be like, oh God, I wish I had a house elf for the ironing, because that's what she wanted it for, and it's just like, she could really hate ironing for some reason, which, fair. But for all that they are kind and somewhat decent, they're still old purebloods, and they still probably wouldn't balk at having a house elf for a slave, so, yeah. They eventually reach the Burrow. We do find out what Mr. Weasley does. He works for the ministry, and that's how they found out about Harry, because their dad heard about it. And I'm just like, damn, that shit didn't say secret. Mr. Weasley works in a different department. He works in the misuse of Muggle artifacts, while Harry was, like, the breach of protocol statute. I don't know, different department with this Mr. Weasley. All I can think is Miss Mafalda Hopkirk, whatever her name is, saw Harry Potter and was like, just spread the damn word like wildfire that Harry Potter was casting underage magic. With a name like Mafalda Hopkirk, whatever. I think that's her name. Definitely. It's definitely her. She's definitely the type to go, did you hear what Janet from HR was up to? I heard she's having a scandalous relationship with, Tim from accounting. She's definitely the type of woman to do that. So anyway, they explain Mr. Weasley's job, and they get there, and there's just Miss Weasley, and Harry says she looks like a saber-toothed tiger, damn, and that all her sons were taller than her. First off, how tall are her children? Because Ron is, like, only 12 at this point. And how tall is Harry? How short is Miss Weasley? How tall is Harry? And how tall is Ron? I need to know these answers. Anyway. She starts screaming. And she's very fair, because they didn't leave a note. 3 of her sons were missing. A flying car was missing. They could have died, and she'd have never known the difference. I understand Miss Weasley. When I first read the book a long time ago, I was like, but they had to rescue Harry, Miss Weasley. Can't you understand that? No, because they didn't leave a damn note. Yeah, I understand Miss Weasley. So they try to say that they starved Harry, and she just kind of throws that away. I guess, to be fair, she's very pissed, and her sons did screw up. So it's just like it could just seem like they're trying to save their own asses by just saying, but they were starving him. They were starving him, and shit like that. I don't know. But also, wouldn't the bars still be on the attached to the flying car or something? So like that should be. I don't know. So we meet Jenny again, and she kind of ran away embarrassed, which fair enough. You meet a guy you got a crush on, and you're in pajamas, her nightgown. She ran off. Fair enough. Well, wouldn't want to meet my crush in a nightgown, I guess. Uh, she starts plating Harry's, giving Harry a plate of food, and damn, 8 or 9 sausages, like 3 fried eggs. Dude, I don't. This man must have been sick. Like, we know he hasn't been getting that much food. So, and this is a lot of food. If he ate it all, he was definitely throwing up. Because that's just not how stomachs work. Anyway, the twins and Ron are punished. They gotta denome the garden. They gotta take the gnomes out of the garden and chuck them away until they come back. Because Mr. Weasley is apparently soft on them. He thinks they're funny, which they seems pretty fun to would just grab them and yuck them 20 to 30 feet. See how far you can get them. Harry decides to help because I guess he feels kind of guilty. They're in trouble because of him. Also, Miss Weasley says that her and Arthur, Mr. Weasley, were also worried, and they were going to come and get him if Harry didn't write by Friday, which I don't know the date, but like that couldn't have been, even if it was a Saturday, I don't know. Which just say, he was going to be fine, which just proves the point. They should have just like talked about their plan, maybe thrown out their worries. Communication, guys. Communication is real key in some of these situations, because if they just said, hey, we're worried about Harry, the parents could have been like, yeah, we're worried about it too, but we're going to go get him ourselves, see what's going up if he doesn't write back by Friday. Ain't a problem. Oh well. So they denome the garden, and Mr. Weasley comes back. He explains his job, and we get a name drop of several people this chapter. Molly drops Gilderoy Lockhart, who will become important later in this book, because he's the author of the gnome book, Denoming the Garden book or whatever. And Arthur mentions that, he had a run-in with Mundungus Fletcher trying to enchant Muggle artifacts. Mundungus will be important in the 5th book. Somewhat important in the later books. And then Miss Weasley kind of baits him into a trap, about artifacts. And then once he starts talking about all the artifacts, Muggle artifacts that were enchanted, she breaks up like a flying car, Arthur Weasley. Ooh. And Mr. Weasley instantly knew he was fucked. Tried to start covering his tracks, explaining the loophole in the law, and then Miss Weasley had none of it. Said, Arthur Weasley, you wrote that loophole in that law. I shouldn't be laughing because this is technically a bureaucrat. Like, this is a man who writes the laws, and this is pure corruption. This is pure corruption. Arthur Weasley specifically wrote a loophole in a law that he wrote, or helped champion, charter, whatever it's called, so he could benefit. And, we kind of would wave this away because we know Arthur Weasley. He's a fun character. He means nothing by it, but at the same time, if a man like Arthur Weasley, who does have good, kind intention, can, slip in this loophole, which just kind of invalidates a good chunk of it. Because you can have enchant a Muggle artifact without intending to use it, but it's just like, that's kind of half the problem, ain't it? If Arthur can do this easily, what about the people who mean malicious intent? And it just speaks of the corruption of the wizarding government, I suppose. Anyway, the twins do mention that if Arthur had to raid his house, he'd had to put himself in handcuffs, which just says everything. He's about the corruption of Arthur Weasley, I suppose. I need to know though, if he was getting arrested, how what would his sentence be? I don't know. So Harry, no, Ron takes Harry up to his room, mentions the ghoul in the attic, and what happens was Ron kind of rambling for a little bit. He's embarrassed about his house because it kind of looks all ramshackled. Harry mentioned that it looks like, and it probably was, just held up by straight magic. I want to know the mechanics of that. How is this house held up by magic? Does Arthur have to periodically just come up and throw some spells up to make sure it doesn't collapse in the damn night? Like, how often does it happen? Every week? Every month? Every couple years? And Harry says it looks like the rooms has been added on when need be, but like, don't we learn that several of the siblings share rooms, I'm pretty sure? So what if they could add rooms when need be, why don't they add more? And who owned the Burrow first? Is this like Molly and Arthur's home, like the home they bought when they first got married? I'd assume so, maybe. Anyway, Ron does his rambling thing, when he kind of gets self-conscious, trying to, both talk about, like, it's not much, but it's, home, and Harry's just like, this is the greatest house I've ever seen. Gotta love Harry. Harry likes the simple things in life, the simple but magical things in life. Overall, I'm going to give this chapter a solid 7 out of 10. I do love that we got the Burrow. I do love that we got some good Miss Weasley. We show that she cared, but she kind of, I feel like her ignoring the he was starved part isn't her being malicious. It's just her not believing leaving her known lying sons, like, who are obviously in trouble and could be trying to save their ass. Like, the twins seem like the people to say a lie to get out of trouble. I don't know if they'd go that far, though, but, I guess maybe. And also, it's the heat of the moment. She hasn't come down. I'll give her the pass. Like, she legitimately had 3 missing sons. For we don't know how long she was up. For all we know, she heard the car going. She woke up, and it just sat there, worried. Where the hell did her sons go? I do love Arthur, even though he's definitely a corrupt kind of politician, but he's a fun character. He's got his hobbies. Don't know if we got a little bit of good, witty, sassy Harry with him saying, see you next summer. I think my least favorite part of this chapter was, nope, we didn't really get that much of Percy. We got mentioned that he's been holed up in his room all summer, which of course we learn is because he's got a girlfriend. Later in this book, we learn that it's because he has a girlfriend. I was watching Super Carlin Brothers Through the Gryffindor podcast, and apparently this is supposed to be a red herring to make us think Percy's guilty of something, which is like, what? I never thought of that. I've read this book several times, but I never thought through everything that Percy would be a red herring. Because it's Percy, but I just thought I was watching the Through the Gryffindor podcast, and I was like, what? And now when I'm reading the chapters, I'm gonna try and see if if the red herrings of Percy tickle my brain, like, because I don't know if they're supposed to be a red herring or just supposed to be the first tip to him being a red herring or whatever, but, you know, there's that. Also, I do love that he named his owl Hermes, because Hermes is the Greek god of messaging. I do find it funny, though, they didn't, because I'm pretty sure owls are the sacred animal of Athena, and she is the goddess of wisdom, which is something that Percy also kind of values, despite being a Gryffindor. I'm going to stick with my 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching the video. Leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want, and I'll see you in the next video.